Hey everybody, Todd Vandermeid back for another edition of Freedom Steel from my makeshift studios here at Rush Medical Center in Chicago. So, are you ready to have some fun with numbers? If so, let's get started right after this. So hey everybody, Todd Vandermeid back for another edition of Freedom Steel, former NRA contract lobbyist, Illinois gun law guru, and I'm coming to you from, as I said, Rush Medical Center here in Chicago, in the ICU ward for neuro care. Got nothing but great things to say about the doctors, nurses, and staff here. My wife is improving. We have a ways to go on this, still waiting to find out everything that we're dealing with. But she did have a stroke with an aneurysm on Christmas morning. And so she's undergone a number of surgeries, and they've got 2 more scheduled this week. And I'll give you a bit longer update later, but we see and hear all your thoughts and prayers and well wishes. And so thank you very much for all that. But now, hey, let's get on to having some fun with numbers today. So January 1st, the registration period was supposed to close for the Illinois State Police, that if you had a firearm, an attachment, or 50 BMG ammo that qualified under the Protect Illinois Communities Act, you were obligated, if you wanted to comply with the law, to register if you wanted to keep that gun here in the state of Illinois. So we've had some real interesting developments. So let's talk about what they've done. So 29,357 individuals registered something. We don't know exactly what. What we do know is that there were a total of 112,350 total disclosures. Those were 69,000 firearms, 42,830 accessories or attachments, and 528 disclosures of 50 caliber BMG ammo. So how does that compare? Well, the funny thing is, since the state police has been giving us updates weekly about these tallies, they have not updated the FOID card numbers. They remain stagnant for the last 3 months at 2,415,481 FOID card holders. Now, not every FOID card holder owns a firearm, or maybe of legal age to own a firearm, because there are people under the age of 18 who get FOID cards. Parents get FOID cards for their kids. But taking that aside, let's talk about the numbers. So there's a number that gets bantered around that 5% of the population owns guns, and these guns only consist of 5% of the population. Washington gun laws kind of use that number. Some other people have used it. The government has used it in their filings in various court briefs when talking about in common use. So with that, based on 2.4 million FOID card holders, if we had that 5% rate, there should have been 120,774 people announcing they had something. If you're accruing 1 gun per person. There should have been 241,548 filed if we're dealing with 10%. I pulled the 10% number out because in talking to a couple of local retailers, they said that the typical AR magazine-fed semi-autos were about 10% of their business. Now, the next 2 numbers, you had a 2022 poll by the Washington Post and IPSOS that came out that said 20% of the people who owned guns owned an AR-15. It was a specific question to the AR-15, not magazine-fed semi-autos. And then you had the National Firearms Survey come out in 2021 that showed 30.2% of gun owners own AR-15s. Again, the question was limited to AR-15s and not semi-auto magazine fed guns. So let's look at some of this. So if we took the 20% number on FOID cards, that would be 483,096 single registrants with a firearm or single firearms. At 30%, based on the National Firearms Survey, you would be looking at 724,644 registrants or single firearms. So almost three quarters of a million registrants and or firearms. But let's dive into these numbers just a little deeper, because I don't think the FOID card numbers tell the whole story. So between 2015 and 2022, the state police report that there were 3,596,014 F-tip background checks run by dealers for the purchase of a firearm. Now, there are sometimes guys get called in more than once because they went over the 30 days. Sometimes guys buy more than one on a 4473, but let's just assume that each transaction is a single firearm, just for the sake of argument. So if we use these same numbers and look at this, we've got, so at 5%, at that number, there's 179,800 firearms sold, because these are transactions. These aren't just gun owners, they are transactions. At the 10% number that a couple of dealers report, you're at 359,601 firearms. At the 20% mark from the Washington Post survey, you are at 719,202 firearms. At the 30% number from the National Firearms Survey, you are at 1,078,804 firearms. So if you take that 30% number based on transactions, with 69,000 being registered, you're a million guns short. And let's look at it this way. In order for you not to subscribe to that number, then you have to say that these two polls were wrong, and that that the Illinois gun owners were bucking every marketing trend that there was. So what you would have to do is you would have to suspend the belief that Illinois gun owners were somehow different than the gun owners that were being surveyed across the country, and that their buying habits were different, that they weren't buying AR-15s at the same rate or volume or percentage. And you'd have to try to suspend that reality in order to disprove these numbers. But let's not forget, these two surveys only dealt with AR-15s. They did not deal with magazine-fed semi-autos in general. They didn't take into account the pistol-gripped Ruger 1022s, the thumb-hole stock 1022s. They did not take into consideration guns like the Ruger Charger. They didn't take into consideration guns like the Sig Tac Ops with a threaded barrel, because our Illinois ban is broader than all of that. And then if you want to have some real fun here, if you contemplate that based on 69,000 firearms being reported, 29,357 individuals doing that reporting, that's 2.3 firearms per person on average, just an average. So if we take that, 30% report owning an AR, that was an AR, not multiples, and you say that the average gun owner that's reporting is reporting 2.3 firearms or items. When you look at that, so now at that 30% number, you are looking at 2,481,249 firearms that are out there at a minimum. At the 20% number, you're at 1,654,166 that should have been reported. Those are based on transaction numbers. And that's only 2015 till 2022. That doesn't include everything post from 04 to 2014, those 10 years. That's not even representative in here if you look at any of this. And the couple of other issues that you have to contemplate, you have to consider, is that, like I said before, our ban is broader. Those numbers only dealt with ARs. They didn't deal with M1As. They didn't deal with FALs. They didn't deal with HKs, whether it be the MP5 platform or the HK93 platform or whatever. Doesn't deal with just regular old semi-auto pistols with threaded barrels on it. So you look at that. And another interesting number is if you go down to the challenge to the pistol brace rule, down in the Fifth Circuit, ATF said that there were between 3 million and 7 million braced firearms out there. And we all know that the 99% of braces are going on semi-auto guns, right? So let's just take what the court said, 5 million. Now, congressional research said up to 40 million, but we're not going to jack the numbers like that. We're going to sit there and say 5 million. It makes the math real easy. Even this kid who was educated in public school can now sit there and do this math in a real easy fashion. So at that, so 5 million braced guns, you're looking at 100,000 per state. Now, a couple of things. You had 8 states that had a semi-auto ban, which included braced style guns for the most part, prior to Illinois' ban taking effect. So now you're talking there's 800,000 guns out there that went somewhere else. They didn't go to those 8 states. Then you look at, say, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. Do we really think that there are 100,000 braced guns in each of those 3 states? I highly doubt it. So now you've got 1.1 million guns that went somewhere, according to ATF and assumption by the Fifth Circuit. So, okay, if Illinois just does its bare bones math at 100,000, there's now another 100,000 guns potentially that adds to that grand total, 100,000. And one of the things we haven't even contemplated considering that the state police have no knowledge of would be when people make purchases out of state. You run over to a gun shop in Iowa, you run over to a gun shop in Indiana, you go to Wisconsin, and you buy, because you can buy long guns across state lines from FFLs. They don't know. They don't know about any of those because those didn't go through the FTIP system. State of Wisconsin calls DOJ. They don't call state police. The dealers over in Iowa, they call DOJ. They don't call state police. And the other part of it, the other 2 parts of this is they have no idea how many 80% guns were manufactured by do-it-yourselfers out there. They have no clue whether they be Glock 19s with style with threaded barrels or ARs or others that there's a lot of home builds out on. And this doesn't necessarily, these studies don't include frames or receivers to where guys bought AR frames. They haven't built them yet, or they're going to make an AR pistol or something, or they're going to make state police don't know. You buy a frame or receiver, it's a frame or receiver. They don't know what it is. So the state police, they can't put any accurate numbers on, but I'm using their numbers to try to justify that I think there are well over 1 million firearms that did not get registered. There are certainly, in my mind, way more than 29,357 gun owners that own these platforms. And by all accounts, I mean, you're potentially looking at, 750,000 firearm owners at one estimate just on ARs that said, hey, no. So, 724 minus 69,000 or 69,000 guns. Got to figure out what that. Let's see 29. Do some quick math here. At the 30% number, you're looking at 695,644 gun owners that said screw you, that flipped the big old middle finger to JB. So, guys, that's some fun with numbers today. I'll put some stuff up later on. Got a few more concepts to go around here. I'm trying to get some content out while I'm here at the hospital looking over my wife. But as always, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, copy, and paste and share the link to this video around. We really appreciate all your support and everything like that. Really want to give a shout out to Gun Barrel Coffee. The nurses here and the staff were running low on some stuff, and they were very kind enough to send a case of coffee up here for them to sample out. It's getting rave reviews, especially from the night shift. But we really want to give a shout out and a thank you to the guys at Gun Barrel Coffee. So with that, thank you very much for all your support. And as always, frag out.